Hello and welcome. The goal of this podcast is to get listeners connected with others in the sports industry because they say it's all about who you know, and now you know us. Hello and welcome everybody to the Constant Sports Podcast, where we connect you with sports industry professionals. I'm your host, 𝐭𝐬𝐱𝐢𝐬, and today we have the pleasure of chatting with 𝐀𝐭𝐫𝐞𝐬 Smurthwaite. Thanks for joining us, 𝐀𝐭𝐫.
Absolutely, Connor. I appreciate the opportunity to talk sports. You have a great podcast, and anytime we can sit around, talk sports, have a good conversation, hey, that's a win for the day.
Yep, 100% agree. And I'm excited to kind of dive down to a little bit about your career path and what you're doing right now with the company you've started, especially because we've never had anyone like you on a podcast. So we're talking a lot about fundraising, revenue generation, marketing, also a little bit of coaching as you've done in the past, some projects you've done and worked on, and address some of those hot button topics. So 𝐀𝐭𝐫, just to kind of start us off here, maybe a short kind of elevator pitch of why sports, why the sports industry, and kind of how you got to where you're at now.
Well, I love that you said elevator pitch because I love to joke, and I've said this multiple times in multiple settings, that I speak on run-on sentences. I got to work on the sound bite. Yeah, it's been great. I've had a wide range of experiences. I've been grateful to be surrounded by wonderful people who have seen maybe me as an opportunity or a high ceiling is maybe their words. But yeah, I started in collegiate athletics. I've always wanted to be working in sports, so to speak. My grandfather worked for the LA Kings, the LA then Raiders.
Yep.
And eventually, well, this is another side story. Here we go. I'm already going on. Is when that whole Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding went down, people started calling around saying, hey, we've got to have, somebody who is respectable, who understands the culture, and who can develop and build relationships. And oh, by the way, protect Nancy Kerrigan. And that was my grandfather that they called.
Okay, here we go.
From Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, Wayne Gretzky, Michelle Kwan, all that. It was Sweet Lou. So I always kind of loved my grandfather and his love for sports, and we always kind of got it together there. But being a student athlete, ended up having a bum shoulder. Had an opportunity to jump into athletics pretty early, basically at 18 with a bum shoulder, and got called into the athletic director, head baseball coach's office, and also in that meeting, I saw on the invite was HR, and I thought, man, HR. I'm a student athlete. What's HR? Is HR going to cut me? But it turned into, hey, you have such an energy. You have a lot of love and passion for the overall student athlete experience. Your teammates love you. Everybody on campus seems to know you. Would you want to keep your scholarship and then get paid to work on sports information and help us with corporate partnerships? And I was 18. I said, absolutely, let's do it. I had no clue. So, then into coaching and then into athletic administration and fell into great. And I say the word fell. I think there was a little bit of luck with it.
Yep.
Fell into great situations. But with that luck, I was able to pound the pavement, put my head down, and really make some fun things happen. A lot of money coming in and, building great relationships. And that kind of turned into a job that kind of took me outside of collegiate athletics, but still more in that sports and entertainment world with the V Foundation. Great foundation. I'm going to give a plug there for them. 100% of their donations go to cancer research. Coach Valvano, ingrained in sports. But with that, when I started there, I had a couple of athletic directors reach out and say, hey, if you ever want to jump back in, just give me a call. Or, hey, if you want to have a project, have a little side gig, we'll pay you to help out with a couple of, and the word was laundry list of items.
Yeah.
I was focused, but all of a sudden when that V Foundation was a 40, 45 hour job a week, I was accustomed to 60. I'm kind of sitting around. I think my wife was like, I'm sick of you.
You gotta get out.
You're going on 1 million walks a day with the dog. So I accidentally kind of started a side business as this contract consulting work as the word of mouth got out and got to a point where sports and entertainment company that's emerging said, hey, we'd love for you to help us out. I helped them out. They put me on the payroll as a retainer, and it kind of opened me up to do this more full-time. Then all of a sudden I got asked to teach 2 courses at a couple of institutions. So adjunct online professor, and now working at athletics admin, working with 2 other consultants, assisting collegiate athletic departments in quote unquote the laundry list of things that these ADs can't get to, but they know they need to, or even external affairs folks.
Yeah. Well, one thing I multiple things I loved about kind of your stories, and I feel like it's good for the listeners is, sometimes we fall into things in careers or, with the right people and things kind of fall into place. And then also doing a bunch of things, coaching, then you kind of pop every time an opportunity, presents itself to, essentially attack that opportunity. Don't waste and waste your time thinking about this and that. Just kind of go head in, and then also, learning a bunch of skills and wearing a bunch of hats. And sounds like, just from what I've seen is, you're very good at it. And also it explains the helmets behind, and just touching on that, one of the better backdrops, I've seen in a while. It's real. We touched on that already. So that's good to see, that we got that going on. And maybe you can tell the viewers kind of what that's led with the helmets in the background, kind of what, along your journey.
So anytime I'm a little bit behind. Sorry to the schools that haven't, seen the helmet up here, but anytime I complete a contract or, sign a contract, I I normally don't ask for a helmet because I don't want to be that guy.
Yep.
Hey, we're signed on. Hey, can I get some free stuff? But I normally will just go to eBay for and now all of a sudden there's gonna be surge pricing on all my stuff. So don't be stealing this and outbidding me.
Yeah.
Going out and grabbing an adult football helmet, that matches the school, and then the decals are $3,
Right.
and then I can try to create my own, and it's kind of fun because when I operate with schools, a good bread and butter right now for me, and or even a pick and roll, so to speak, is some Division I schools that don't have football.
Mhm.
They seem to be a great area, a sweet spot for me, so to speak, that always have things to do. They're understaffed
Yeah.
and they don't have football. And so that's why they're kind of understaffed, that they're like, oh, okay, yada, 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 X, Y, and Z we're not getting to. So that's kind of where I come in. But USC Upstate, they don't have football.
Mhm.
They now have a football helmet. And I've got Utah Valley University. We
Yep.
got a football helmet there. So all I'll say is this, Connor. When those schools add football, I already have the prototype for their helmets ready to go.
Right.
We'll hop it on. I'll even, you know what? I might even be a model for them. We'll see.
Yeah, you got the first gen, prototype there. And regarding some of the project and things, we saw you posted the other day on LinkedIn your project with Hawaii, and how you generated a substantial amount of money for their, I guess, new revenue, you could say. So regarding those types of projects, what are some strategies that lead to success, rather?
I think first off, I have to give major credit to Craig Angeles, the athletic director there. Seasoned veteran, been an athletic director at Florida Atlantic. I think the deputy AD number two at Indiana, Miami,
Oh,
Long
wow.
Island, Temple. So I mean, he is elite at what he does, and then he has great foresight. And every institution is the same, but also different. And what Craig does very well is he thinks outside the box. And to do that, he's enabled me to kind of operate my own game plan in conjunction with what they're already doing. And with that is, you know, taking jerseys, taking the assets they already have. And I've done this at other institutions, but it's really worked well at Hawaii because, again, kudos to Craig
Mhm.
to, and I'm very, again, grateful for Craig for kind of giving me a longer leash to say, can we do this? And maybe leash is the wrong word, but him taking on the risk. Because if it fails, it's going to be on Craig. It's not on me. And
Right.
so I want to make sure Craig looks good. So taking some of these assets like jerseys that they have, or taking what the minor league approach, so to speak, in that minor league baseball, they come out with a different jersey
All the
weekly.
time. Yeah.
They even came out with a whole line of La Copa de la Diversión, which was kind of their Hispanic heritage, alternate theme, and it was a huge success. And I think it's kind of gotten outside of the realm a little bit too much. But then you even see it with the City Connect jerseys,
Yep.
City Edition jerseys, and MLB and NBA. So kind of taking that model and saying, hey, let's do something creative that gives the fans a little bit more of a connection to, whether it's retro, futuristic, turn up the clock like the Mariners did
Hmm.
30 years ago, and then taking those jerseys, wearing them for a game, and then auctioning them off to help build a scholarship fund. And we did that for 3 sports. It netted about 84,000, but there was another 15,000 of that came through, buying shirts, buying.
And different merch.
Correct. And we're not even talking about now as we're walking in and working towards year 2 of that program, we're now finding corporate partners who want to be a part of that
Yep.
experience. Now, oh, by the way, the ticket office is also excited because fans are now asking, hey, when are you going to be doing that theme night? Hey, when are you going to do
Mm.
retro? And, it was something I did at Southern Utah. And for what it's worth, it was denied 4 times, that idea, that thought, because we had the ugliest colors of all time. Utah University, the retro. I mean, just ugly. But ugly is also different. And that elicits the
Stands
emotion
out. Yep.
people are going to remember. And now that's one of the most popular nights of retro night and expanded into other sports. And it wasn't until the 5th time I said, I am willing, if we lose money, I will take on the jersey costs myself individually because I believe in this. I know this is what fans want. I'm a fundraiser. I'm out there. I'm talking to people. I'm in charge of licensing. I know what people are buying. This is going to sell. And it was a huge success, and taking that and replicating it at other institutions. But Hawaii has been just green light, go for it. And again, I'm very grateful for Craig and his staff because, they have to deal with me, being 2,500 plus miles away
Yeah.
and operating this and working with them. But it takes a lot of collaboration, team effort. I can't do it myself. Very kudos to Craig and his staff.
Mhm. Yeah, I love to hear it. And especially nowadays with, I guess, athletes and fans are interested in the different jerseys, and they see, like you said, the MLB and the NBA, NFL doing Thursday night different jerseys, and the college kids are saying, we want our special jerseys, and for family and friends, that's cool too, right? To have kind of your kid's jersey in a different color and things like that. So, you know, creative, out of the way, out of the box, idea is always, influential in getting those dollars in, and kind of staying in the college, I guess, athletic department space. Have you seen like the NIL collectives and fundraising and new revenue? Have you seen that kind of clash heads? Because I feel like in the space, it's, you hear donor fatigue, and now they're and Tennessee's doing like a 10% sales tax for the athletes. So I feel like it's, yeah, kind of some people are into it, some people aren't. I'm just interested on your thoughts.
So I go back to, I want to say it was the late 2000s. I should probably memorize this date, but the fruits, nuts, and bagels rule.
Yep.
When student athletes could get a snack, but it couldn't be
Team.
cream cheese,
Yep.
peanut butter, strawberry jam. I mean, it was in the NCAA manual as the fruits, nuts, and bagels
Yep.
rule. I mean, think about that. There's 300 pages at the time. Actually, I think it was like 367. And there is a whole paragraph on fruits, nuts, and bagels. And student athletes asked for that. And the NCAA was, no, that's an impermissible benefit, yada, yada, yada. And I always go back and think, what would have happened if the NCAA said, you know what, this is a little ridiculous. Let's maybe, let's
Pump
take
the
a,
brakes. Yeah.
yeah, let's take a breather. Let's pump the brakes. This is something that Clemson's not going to go out and give 3 million things of cream cheese, specialty cream cheese. That's not going to be a recruiting difference. But I go back to what would have happened if they would have said yes and maybe lowered their standards. But it was such a hard line that it's almost
Mhm.
like that rebellious teenager. All of a sudden, you say no, no, no,
Yeah.
and the fight comes back. So there is a lot of clash. And I was just talking to a couple weeks ago, actually, no, a couple days ago, as I kind of alluded to on one of my projects for Hawaii is running their apparel deal.
Mhm.
Also have in these apparel deals now that sponsor patches, are
Right.
now permissible to be on the field, to be on the jerseys. And it's been really fun to see from the University of Hawaii's lens as that conversation has come up as the lead negotiator for this upcoming apparel deal, that these Nike, Under Armour, even BSN, New Balance, that's now part of the equation
Yeah.
because Nike sent out a letter, I want to say it was about a year ago, saying, hey, I know this is coming down, but y'all already have a corporate partner.
Yeah.
The swoosh. I mean, I know I'm pointing to the three stripes right here, but if you think about it, they're right.
Yeah.
That's there. Now all of a sudden that piece is already being diversified. You now
Mm.
have donors at institutions who are coming up and saying, I heard this 2 weeks ago from a small school, D1 in Texas, that their donor came in and said, hey, I gave $500,000 to the collective. And the athletic department was like, thank you. That's awesome. But we were also preparing to ask you for $2 million because the guy makes, 15, 20 million, has his own business, all this stuff. But the collective wasn't really collaborating with the campus. And
Mm.
now all of a sudden this donor is telling him, hey, I'm good. I'm helping you out. But
Yeah.
in reality, that 500,000 is, again, great, but not going towards maybe the overall cause and leaving money on the table.
Hmm.
Whereas maybe a collaborative approach and getting collectives, I'm grateful that now the NCAA is kind of letting it be a little bit more, underneath the umbrella.
Yep.
It's causing a lot of problems. And I should have prefaced with I'm all for NIL. I think it's a great benefit. I think it's been a little too much. I struggled when I was coaching, when I had, Noel Johnson, who was an all conference performer, not be able to put in for 20 hour or $20 for an hour for a lesson from an all conference pitcher, all conference hitter of the Mountain West Conference.
Yep.
She could do that. That was against violation. But then I look across the campus and I see, one of the culinary students, saying, "Hey, I'll do meal
Curtain classes. Yeah.
yeah, I'll do meal prep for you. I'm also the head, the president of the culinary club," and they're promoting that, and even at a higher price point. And Noel's just trying to make $20, do this. So you got it. They never really wanted to put student athletes on a pedestal. I get that, but that's the part of NIL that is truly acceptable.
Yeah.
Now the parts of throwing 100K in a McDonald's bag and handing it off and saying, "Oh, by the way, can you post twice at 2:13 in the morning, after a game?" Great. That's the part where I kind of struggle, and I think that at some point the dust has to settle. But I really don't foresee that happening very soon at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is just so interesting because it's such a new, I guess, industry, right? Like the whole NIL thing is only 3, 4 years old at this point, and I personally feel like they opened the floodgates. I mean, I don't know how they were going to slow it down, but they opened it and then just said, "All right, let's see what goes on here." And then now they're trying to claw back, and the NCAA is still, making their legal pushes, and schools are still figuring it out. And I think it'll still be interesting to see, how D2, D3, how that affects the whole thing with NIL and how athletes, work, and then revenue sharing. I know that's more of a D1 thing as far as the licensing and all those things. But staying in the licensing space, you touched on earlier with, the Nike, and I guess for Arkansas they have Tyson on their field, and having, maybe a Tyson. I don't know if it's on their jersey patch yet or not, but what do you think that looks like as far as, the continue to grow in that area and ensuring all the licensing deals are, on the same page? 'Cause now you got the Tyson, you got the Nike, you got the school, you got all these people, trying to get on the jersey.
You're on a perfect path. You're on a perfect path there, Connor. Yeah, and I'll even add one, if not two more layers to this. You have your MMRs, your multimedia
Yeah.
right, for your corporate partners like Learfield, Van Wagner,
Hmm.
and there's a couple other boutique spots, startups, but they're also the ones saying, "Hey, that's our asset.
Yeah.
Look at our agreement. It says X, Y, and Z," and you're seeing some coming to the table saying, "Hey, we should renegotiate." Wink. And all of a sudden, there's a couple extra pages in there in regards to NIL, on-field use, advertisements, and there's so many NIL startups, businesses. Some are very successful already, but I feel like I'm learning about new ones left and right. But it adds that another layer, again, going back to that financial aspect, that
Mhm.
you're diversifying some of your money, revenue share, athletes, corporate partners.
Yeah.
And now here's that second layer of, if your licensing department is mainly housed as a campus entity, now you're trying to suffice and work with them and to explain what's happening. Because again, this is another one of my go-to statements is, and I tell this to my students when I'm teaching a sports management or sports reporting class at the college level: I'll give y'all 50 extra credit points if you can go find me an institution that has collegiate athletics in their mission statement. Athletics is a subsidiary
Yep.
doing their own thing underneath the umbrella of higher education.
Institution. Yeah.
It's not there. So trying to explain that to sometimes when the licensing division is housed on campus, it just doesn't make sense to them. I mean, these are folks who maybe played sports past third or fourth grade. I'm sure there's some high school athletes in there, but even above that, does your president understand how it operates? Because it really is a very unique and broken system and how it operates. So trying to explain that to a president who all they know is that the football program, growing up as, in their career as a professor and then a dean and all that, is, oh, well, football, they just see all these millions and, whatnot. it's sometimes very difficult. And again,
Mhm.
that alignment needs to be, it's never going to be perfect, but it's got to be close in order to really progress and develop. And then, even to throw this on for Hawaii is and Wyoming is the very much the same way. They're the only Division I school in the state.
Yeah,
Maine, New Hampshire, and I'm not going to go any further than that because or else I'm going to upset a fan base or two.
yeah.
You forgot about us, but then you have the state legislature that's involved, and that adds a completely different layer. So now, not only are you trying to convince mom and dad in the president's office, you're also trying to convince grandma and grandpa in the state senate, the senator in Capitol Hill for the state office. So it adds more layers upon layers on how to get aligned, and if you're not aligned, you're going to have an athletic department. You're going to have a program, a team that's very dysfunctional because you have to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah. No, and that kind of we talked about it off air a little bit, but you mentioned kind of a little dysfunction, maybe, and kind of athletic department coaching. Obviously, with your coaching career and your time over at Utah State, we saw the head football coach, that situation there, and then there's a lot kind of going on. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on the situation, or how, or even when you're working with an athletic department and something like this happens, how that affects fundraising, possibly new revenue opportunities.
Great question, very loaded, and I'll give kind of a multifaceted answer. And I can say that Utah State, our one institution, my wife Emily and I, we love it there. Technically, I'm still an employee at Utah State because I teach a couple of
Teach.
classes,
Hmm.
journalism and communication school, and it's tough to watch as people that I know are impacted, and that goes down to even some of the entry level folks. But I think what people forget in the grand scheme of things is that there was a culture of uh, Title IX issues,
Hmm.
violence amongst the football program, and even spilled into some other programs as well. But that doesn't really get out there because the lens and the microscope is right there on the football program, and then
Yeah.
at the whole, the athletic department, and then even above that is the institution itself. The Department of Justice has lived on that campus. Like they have offices, they live there, and there are multiple, from my understanding, that they are there operating and trying to keep Utah State in compliance. And even
Hmm.
some of the stuff happened while they were still there. And you had an athletic director take another job, John Hartwell. You had a president that stepped into a different role. And when they were doing the searches for those replacements, with the backdrop of the department, United States DOJ. I know there's a narrative out there that it was the Utah DOJ.
Hmm.
That's not. It's the United States Department of Justice that is living there in those offices. With that backdrop in mind, part of the hiring process from my sources and people directly involved said that this was a hot topic in regards from the Board of Trustee, Board of
Hmm.
Regents, from the state to make changes because it was starting to get to a point where that black eye was turning into a second black eye. They were
Yeah.
coming. There was a lot of things going on, and some of the suggestions that aren't out in the media of what their suggestions of of a resolution were pretty extreme, like very extreme. And part of that, again, coming way above the president's head, was to make some of these changes. And
Hmm.
regardless if there's a hidden agenda or not, with the backdrop of this is why some of these folks were hired. This was a number one priority from the state and a number one priority from the Department of Justice to clean this culture up. It kind of starts to make sense.
Yeah.
And then of course you have all these other X, Y, and Z's. There's always going to be folks affected. Regardless of if the person, human being, is a good man, good woman, good neighbor, it doesn't matter. You got to go back on the backdrop and the bigger picture. And I do have to say one of the SWA who's no longer there, completely class act. I mean, that people who want to take a really bad and rough situation, and I am sure there were, and she even said it in one of her letters, a lot of tears were shed, and I
Hmm.
believe it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
with her, that's a playbook on how to handle a tough situation. She's an Aggie. She's going to be supportive, and she understands and gets it. And yeah, it doesn't mean that there were some tough times, but go Aggies, great people there, great fan base, great memories there. But I got to wish them the best. And I've met Diana in passing a couple of times, spoke to her briefly once. I'm not a Diana expert, but I'll tell you this. Diana is very well respected in the industry. Diana has that almost that ethos of big time. She's going to take Utah State to places. It just might take a little bit of time with some of these roadblocks
Yep.
and detours.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes that, you kind of feel like a lot of the programs, maybe not recently, but a lot of major programs have kind of these bumps and bruises, and it's kind of a clean sweep, and you kind of got to start over. Like with we saw that with Arizona State, and I mean USC, a bunch of programs, right? Unfortunately, some of these things, tend to happen. Humans, make mistakes and whatnot, and then you really just gotta start fresh and move along. And really, the athletics kind of consulting space is always interesting, and obviously you're in the consulting space, and so. Do you think more athletic departments, I mean, I would assume you would say yes to this, but as more athletic departments kind of turn to
Next question,
consulting,
please.
do you think it's like the athletic departments, as you mentioned with laundry lists, I mean, are those kind of everyday problems for D1, D2, D3, JUCO? I mean, have you seen it in your time?
Absolutely. And I'll just say this in some of my relationships with USC Upstate, especially. I mean, I love all the schools I work with. From, again, the time zone differences, morning, Spartanburg, South Carolina, to school in the Midwest. I mean, we have about 7 schools working on a couple more, all the way to the University of Hawaii. So my time zones, I should have a clocks behind me. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about, I should have clocks with
All
school.
the
But I said it a little bit earlier. All schools are the same, but they're also very different.
different.
What
Yeah.
might work in Honolulu might not work in Vermilion, South Dakota, and what might not work there probably doesn't work in Orem or even Flagstaff, Arizona. But a lot of them are the same.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of financial resources. We're understaffed. The NIL and those revenue sharing aspects really takes in these employees and thins them out.
Mm.
And kind of our bread and butter at athletics admin is we're coming in and for a flat rate is I mean we're in the mid 90s a flat rate a week, which is cheaper than a student employee. We're offering these services of, hey, let's help you get out those laundry lists of things from 11 through 15. We already know what your top 10 is, but those 11 through 15 we never really get to.
Kind of the nagging ones.
Exactly. And even, sometimes I feel like a little bit of a therapist with some of these, employees are like, hey, I mean, you've been in my shoes, what do you think? What are your experiences? And we're very explicit and, very affordable. We're very explicit in our scope of work. I have 2.5 other people who help me. This is my full-time job. This is what I'm doing. Every day is completely different. I know it's cliche, but that's what I love about it.
Yep.
My
Agreed.
hands get dirty and on the East Coast, Midwest, all the way to the Hawaiian Standard Time. But they're all very different, but they're all very similar. And so what we've been trying to do at Athletics Admin is really trying to put that emphasis back on that student,
Mhm.
not athlete. The student is greater than the athlete. And that's something I believe in. I was grateful to have a head coach, an athletic director, and even an HR person back in my JUCO days that saw something in me and gave me an opportunity. And that opportunity, I made the most of it. And I've always continued to try to do that. And so I am completely fine taking a little bit of a price break, knowing that I also am working with the sports and entertainment company at a decent amount to help offset a few things. And when push comes to shove, I have these resources and partnerships at heavily discounts to be able to enhance these athletic departments. And so
Yeah.
I want the best deal in the business that's putting student athletes walking across the stage with their diploma and also a couple of championship rings on their fingers. And to me, that's fantastic. And with our explicit scope of services, because every school is different, we want to make sure that we're quantifying and showing that value that we're bringing to each athletic department at Athletics Admin.
Yep. No, love it. And then where can, I guess, potential athletic directors and departments find you, website and things like that, socials and whatnot?
Athleticsadmin.com. Find me on LinkedIn. That's kind of my baby. I'm back on Twitter. We'll just say during that whole COVID year, and there was a bunch of changes on Twitter, I got locked out of my OG accounts and thousands of followers. So I've kind of transitioned more into LinkedIn. If you just type in Smurthwaite, you're probably going
It's
to find
a good
that's
hit rate. Yeah.
there's not too many of those, Connor. I'm aware of that, but yeah, athleticsadmin.com. Find me on LinkedIn. You can also Google that up, and we're rolling. I'm excited for the future. We've got great opportunities. Going back to the University of Hawaii real quick is this apparel deal as the industry is taking a step back. There are schools that are taking $400,000 to $600,000 reductions in their 3, 5, 7 year deals.
Wow.
And that's annually, by the way, Connor. Hawaii, we're wrapping it up. It's gone quick. I've already in this, doing this podcast, have missed 3 calls, texts from some apparel folks brokering a deal. I will tell you in kind of those 3 main categories for apparel, Hawaii is going to go 4x and all the way up to even 14x of their original deal with bonuses built in. And, they're house money at this point.
Yeah.
And testament to the Hawaii brand, the culture, the fans. And I think that's really exciting. But again, going back to Google athletics admin or Casey and then just try to put out Smurf or Smurthwaite, we'll make it work.
You'll find you. That's awesome. And we're looking forward to seeing that deal kind of come to fruition and blast it out online. And it's very, very awesome what you're doing. And before we go, wrapping up here, last words, final advice for those in the sports industry before we wrap up.
The advice for those in the sports industry: don't. No. Uh,
End it there.
yeah, end it there. And from and as somebody who's been in a lot of different roles, and again, very grateful to be in the roles that I was given, and mentors who really gave me an opportunity that they shouldn't have.
Hmm.
I mean, that's it. I mean, I don't want to get emotional, but I look back and I think these people were crazy to let me do some of the things that I did. But I can pull from those various experiences in ticketing to marketing, corporate sponsorships, coaching, and fundraising. I mean, I have fundraised a lot, but I think the biggest thing for the future is understand that it's a lifestyle. It's a 60-hour a week job, and the money comes later.
Hmm.
And I can say that as somebody who's not even necessarily explicitly in the industry. I have one foot in it and one foot out it, but it's people are willing to help people, especially in higher ed and by extension, collegiate athletics. It's fun to be around a college campus. It's fun to be around these coaches who are human beings. Sometimes we forget that these are
Yep.
18, 22-year-old students that are there taking a biology test on Monday, and then they're
Playing at night.
25-page paper due on Friday, and oh, by the way, they have homecoming on Saturday, and they're the starting running back, and they've got to put up 125 yards, or else their team's not going to win. It's easy to forget and only see with the athlete side, and kind of I know I run on sentences here, but lastly is working in collegiate athletics is also very visual. It's very vulnerable and it's volatile,
Mm.
and sometimes I hear stories from regular 9 to 5 jobs, and I think, man, that mistake, if you can find an equivalent in collegiate athletics, would have been on the front page of the newspaper,
Yep.
lit up the fan,
Everywhere.
lit up social media. It's a tough day at the office when you have 30 to 40,000 spectator seating in your office. And it's very visual, and you have to be okay. I've made mistakes. I've said stupid things. I've done stupid things. But at the end of the day, I've learned from those mistakes. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yep.
Learn from mistakes, have a little fun, and understand it's a lifestyle, and the money's going to come later.
Yep. Appreciate it. Great, great parting words there, Casey. Thanks for joining us and listening and viewers. This has been another episode of the Constant Sports Podcast. You can find this Apple, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your content. And we're looking forward to getting this out. Thanks again, Casey, for joining us.
Thanks, Connor.
Yep. We'll see you.